Hi everyone, we are now onto our advanced commands summary lesson. So hopefully you made your way through those 4 commands that made up this section. They were a little bit tricky and a little bit different. So we are going to spend a little bit of time going through how they look. Now, don't forget, you do need your coding cards out with you. Some of these algorithms are going to get quite long, so make sure you've got plenty of space to work with, but let's have a look and jump in. So this time we had 4 to do, not 3. We had an extra one in there. And these ones act a little bit differently because they can act as our if statements. They can also kind of act as our thens, but you would have noticed that sometimes around the language you usually start to use the word on as well. But let's jump in and let's have a look. Remember, pause at any time if you need extra time to find the correct card. So using your coding cards, let's try and remember the first one. So the very first one I'm bringing up is the game rule command. So what cards in the correct order make up the game rule command? Okay, let's see how you went. So first card we should have had is /game rule, followed by the rule, followed by whether that rule is true or false. Now, the rule here can be made up of lots of different ones that are available, and you should pick that up in your module work when you're doing the specific game rules. You can click on to explore all of the different game rules, and that's totally up to you as to what you want to happen in the game. Then this one here, technically optional, but it is always good to set whether you want that true or false, or we think of that as on or off. Now, if you don't use it, it just reverts to what the opposite is happening in the game at that point in time. Let's have a look at the next one. So there's a bit of a clue here with the or in it, because there's 2 ways you can do this one. What cards, and I do want all 3 of them, don't mind which ones you put first here, but what cards do you need for the test for command? Okay, let's see how you went. So obviously has to start with /test4. And remember, these ones are kind of what we call our conditional cards. And we can either have them in the purple repeating block, which acts as an iteration, so it's constantly searching or constantly running, or we can also run them as triggers as well in the trigger, the impulse block, which means that they need something else to activate them, not necessarily just testing for that area. It needs an additional condition before it. But we then needed the radius or the exact location card. So remembering that when we're dealing with the radius, we're dealing with the radius in which the player is from the command block. So how many blocks away they are from it kind of acts a bit like a sensor. Or we can just specify an exact location. So as in that command will trigger if a player is at that exact location. So there's our main 2. These 2, I didn't mind which order that you had them in, and which one you choose is really up to you. Depends on the gameplay. You may just have a scenario in your game where you just need to be in a general area. Okay, so you just have to pass into that zone, and that will trigger off that command. Or you may decide that they need to be at a very specific location. So realistically, they're the reasons why you would use those 2 different types of commands. Let's have a look at the next one. So use your cards and show what the test for block command looks like. What 3 do you need, and in which order do they go in? Okay, let's see how you went. So starting off with /test for block. And these kind of get tricky because they kind of all sound the same. We started with test for, now we're at test for block, which means we then need to know the position that we're looking for that block and what block it is. So what is that XYZ position to test? and what is the name of the block that we're looking for. So very, very specific, this command. Okay, so using your coding cards, what do you need to make up the test for blocks command? So not test for block, test for blocks command. What cards do you need and in what order? All right, so starting off with test for blocks, we then must give it a beginning and an end position to test for, and we must give it a destination to compare it to. So this is kind of a little bit of a combination of what we learn in the fill command. So we just must know the space, but then the game also needs to know, well, what do you want me to compare it to? So you actually have to have duplicates or clones of the blocks that you want in the world. And if they match, which means that they're true, then the command will run or will be executed. Okay, so there's our beginning, our end, and our destination. What's really important with these, as we can see in our instructions, is that we're always looking for the opposite corner, and we always want to use the lowest value. So we're using our coordinates, our X, Y, and Z, and when we do the destination, we want to look for what the lowest value is. So what's the lowest coordinate value? That's the one that we want. Let's have a look at unpacking some algorithms. So place your cards in the correct order based on the following algorithm. So if a disc is placed in a jukebox, then set the game rule mobs to true. So what cards do you need to make that algorithm? All right, let's see how you went. So we need that if a disc is placed in a jukebox, then we use the game rule command, which means we then need to know the rule. In this case, it's mobs, the mobs one. So this would be allow mobs, and then it would be set to true. Let's have a look at another one. On a block is placed if at world position 594, 12, 45, a block of gold is detected, then give the nearest player a lever. So this is a tricky one. It's got kind of like an extra element. This is what kind of pushes us into our advance. There's actually three things that are happening, or there's three statements in this algorithm. So to help you out, the first statement is on a block is placed. That's the first statement. The second is if at world position 594, 1245, a block of gold is detected, then the third statement that makes up our algorithm is then give the nearest player a lever. So what cards do you need to make up that algorithm? All right, let's see how you won. So first of all, we need this one, which is kind of a little bit different because most of our if or on block cards have illustrations on it. This one doesn't. This is just where we're talking about placing a block or breaking a block or being within a certain radius of a block. So just things kind of naturally occurring in the game, not necessarily kind of pulling a lever or jumping on a pressure pad, something that's maybe not so obvious. Then if at the world position, which just means we're testing for a block, and that's our position, and that's what we're looking for. So that is our block of gold. That's what we're detecting. So those three cards made up the if at well position 594, 1245, a block of gold is detected. That's what those three cards, which leaves us with our last three, which is then give the nearest player a lever. Okay, so a little bit of a tricky one, and that's actually three statements there that are making up our algorithm. Let's have a go at another advanced one. So on a cauldron is filled if a block of gold is at world position 3, 25, 11, 23, then summon a zombie to 325, 11, 25. Just like before, give you a hint, there are 3 statements that make up this algorithm. So what cards do you need in the correct order to show this? All right, let's see how you went with this one. So, correct. If a cauldron is filled, then we're going to test for a block. Where is that block position and what is its name? In this case, it was gold. We know its position. Then we use the summon card, the mob, so the entity type, and its spawn position. Where do we want it to spawn in our world? Let's have a look at sorting some algorithms. So in this case, we're going to have a look at these because they're in the wrong order. So the first thing you can do is find these 4 cards, but I want you to put them in the correct order. At the moment, they're in the wrong order. So use your cards to show me what that should look like. Let's see how you went. So always starting with our if. So this time we're placing an item in a chest. Then we have our game rule, followed by the rule in particular, followed by whether it's true or false, so on or off. Let's have a look at this one. So we've got a mixture of advanced and beginners cards here. How do we set this up? We had a go at this before. So all the cards are there for you, but how would I put them in the right order? Have a go with your own cards. See if you can put them in the correct order from left to right. Okay, let's see how you went. Correct. So if we start, so we're starting with the composter because that's our trigger, which means that then we can run this test for. Now, what's interesting about this is that if we ever use that if or on a composter is filled, that would naturally mean that our /test for would sit in an impulse block. So it'd sit in the orange command block because it's waiting for the composter to be filled. That's quite important when you want to build out algorithms like this in your game designs. Now to do that, could have used either card, but in this case, we use this one. We're looking for an exact location. So we're going to look to see if a player is standing in an exact location. And if they are there, so if that's true, we're then going to give that nearest player, or maybe everyone, totally up to how we want the game, the item that they need. Let's have a look at this one. So work out what goes first, followed by what makes up the rest of the algorithm. So using your own cards, show how that should look. All right, so in this case, it's a /test for block. Now there's no trigger before it, it is the trigger. So that means that we would want to be using the purple block. The purple one is our what we would call our iteration in our coding language. So it's constantly running or it's constantly looping. And to make up the rest of this command, we need to know the position of the block, that we need to know the block that it's looking for. And then so if that's true, we'll then summon the mob, so the entity that we want to summon, to the position that we want to summon it to. Let's have a look at this one. How would this one work? What's the trigger? What's then the event that is occurring to make up the algorithm? Have a go with your cards. All right, let's see how you went. So just like before, there's no initial like physical trigger, like a lever or a pressure pad. The block itself is the trigger. So we would be using the purple block again. and it would be set to iteration, which means it's just looping. So be constantly testing for blocks. And then how this one works is we need to know the beginning and the end destination. And then we need to know what it's going to compare it to. So those two have to match up. If they match up, they're then true, which means that we can run the game rule. We specify the rule that we want to run. We'd say whether we want it on or off, true or false. All right. So now we're going to see if we can pick up any errors that are in here. So again, using your cards, have a look at this statement. It's not quite right. There's a problem with this statement. See if you can find it. Remember, you can press pause before this goes to the wait screen if you need to keep looking at it. All right, let's see how you went. They're all kind of the correct cards. It's just these two were around the wrong way. So the game rule must first specify the rule that it wants to run and whether we want that true or false. And if you picked it up, right at the end there was also that we need to specify the player, okay, or the target that we want. So there was actually lots of errors in that algorithm. Let's now have a look at this one. So something not quite right about this. Can you find the error in this algorithm? All right, so no tricks with this one. There's just one error, and it is right at the end instead of the title text, because title text is for when we want to do the big messages up on the screen. It is actually title name. So title text, title name, quite often a command people get caught up or confused with. Let's have a look at this one. There's something not quite right about this algorithm. All right, let's see how you went. So first things first, the second card was incorrect. And I would have given you equal points if you put either of those cards down. It just depends on the gaming scenario that you want to run. Then, yes, there was an extra one that was wrong with this. These two at the end. That one is a little bit easier because the colors were wrong. So we kind of know that when we're doing a then TP that the rest of the cards need to be the same color. So we don't want to specify that in the language that we use that we're going to say spawn position, we just say position when we're using teleport. And then we want to know the facing position just so that we improve that gameplay. We always want to make sure our player is facing the direction we want them to go. Okay, so now you've got these 4 gaming scenarios to go through. So remember, just like before, you need your coding cards out. And what you're looking for is to watch those scenarios nice and carefully. Remember, you can rewind them if you need to, and identify which cards in the correct order make up what you're seeing happening in that gaming scenario. Then you can watch on to see if you got the answer correct. And don't forget, you can keep watching on if you want to see how it was actually built out as well. Then after that, you've got your quick knowledge check to do so you can see how you're going. All right, good luck. We'll see you again soon.